I wonder what you think of how our parent company, is approaching this both strategically and tactically.
Well, I think it's exciting for NBC to get into the fray, and obviously the entire industry is shifting to an on-demand model. I think there's no question that's what consumers have been responding to. So it's time for NBC to jump in. The challenge for them certainly is, as you mentioned, it's a July 15th launch, which makes them kind of the latest even in the launching in 2020 services. So we'll still have a couple more services coming online prior to, so HBO Max will come online this spring, Quibi, which is the short form player before, then Peacock will come online. And the name still makes me smile a little bit each time, Peacock, July 15th. So I'm working on making that a comfortable name to say all the time.
The Bulls would argue, I think, that if Disney used The Mandalorian and the Star Wars franchise as early rocket fuel, that Comcast will do the same thing with the Olympics. How powerful is that?
Well, I think live viewing is one of the great unknowns as we move into this on-demand universe. So you're absolutely right that it's a arrow in the quiver of NBC that differentiates it. Every time the Olympics come on, the world stops to enjoy premier athletes. So it'll be interesting to see, I think, exactly as you'd said, plays like The Mandalorian, that's an on-demand show that you can watch multiple episodes when you want. The Olympics is a live event that usually you don't want to see it 3 days after someone won a gold medal. So it's a bit different. It'll be interesting to see exactly how it's leveraged on Peacock.
Elizabeth, what's the game here for NBCUniversal and Comcast, though? I mean, I know we tend to count subscribers, but they're not going mainly for that subscription fee. They're going for advertising. So is it the one advertising platform across all the different media that people should really be concerned about? Is it engagement trends, their ability to surface gems in the library? What?
Well, it's a little bit of all of those. You're exactly right that having advertising is the only, they're one of the only platforms doing that. Hulu obviously has had an ad-supported offering for a long time. Outside of that, everyone else has chosen to be a subscription-only model. So NBC was clear yesterday in that announcement you guys have shown that they want to leverage having a product for advertisers and take advantage of that revenue stream in addition to having a subscription model. So it'll be interesting to see who responds in what way. Hulu has articulated in the past that the majority of their users do use the ad-supported model. So if NBC is able to effectively leverage both revenue streams, that's a nice differentiator for them. I think it's challenging in a space where consumers are getting more used to watching when they want, how they want. Obviously, the DVR has changed how we all even watch advertising in the programs that we watch on demand. So it's a different type of service to offer, and we'll see exactly how consumers respond to that.
Elizabeth, I want to dig into the point you just made about sports a little bit more, because it seems to me that it's sports and it's news that have continued to make the value case, make the proposition for linear TV. ESPN, certainly ESPN Plus was one of the early test cases for bringing sports to streaming. Between what's going to happen with this Peacock service, how do you think that's going to evolve, and what does it do to those cable subscriptions?
Well, Morgan, I think that's honestly the most interesting part of what's to come in the next couple years in terms of on-demand and streaming players. As you'd mentioned, ESPN Plus has come online, but the major professional sporting league rights that ESPN has don't get necessarily streamed without having a cable subscription. So NBC and Peacock coming into the fray, we'll see the Olympics are always a huge event, and then they did announce yesterday that they will have some Premier League rights that they'll be able to show to U.S. consumers online. So that sports play, I think, is really what we will have to see. If you look even in the last 6 months, some of the top-rated linear ratings, meaning people watching networks, of course, is still on sports. We're, of course, going into playoffs this weekend in the NFL. Those will be on linear networks. Those are not on-demand plays at this point. So how that evolves, I think, is the great unknown. What happens to NBA rights, to MLB rights, to hockey rights? And so we're going to have to see, obviously, the NCAA, a huge draw for lots of networks, for TNT and CBS as March Madness comes up. So at this point, that world hasn't transitioned on demand, and honestly, Peacock looks like they're going to be one of the first offerings this summer with the Olympics in July, and then some. They announced the soccer that they'll be airing in August, in addition to Ryder Cup in September. So we'll see how that does work when you put it in an on-demand play when it's a live sporting event. And that's where the advertising play will hopefully really differentiate them.
Finally, it has dredged up the age-old question about whether or not Netflix and Reed would ever reverse course and follow suit, get into the ad-supported space. You seem qualified to answer that question. Would they?
Well, I think for every player, you have to look at your overall business model and what you're trying to achieve. If you think of Amazon thinking about leveraging their entire Amazon shopping network, and each player has to think about that differently. So at this point, Netflix has a business model they've succeeded with, obviously, and they're continuing to try to expand globally. So I don't know that shifting course in your business model at this point is necessarily in their cards, but we'll see. I think everyone will be watching Peacock to get a good sense of how does the advertising component affect viewership and the response of consumers.
Always great guidance, Elizabeth. Thanks so much.